Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. On this week's episode, I, Aaron Kerke, and Kevin Bender are having a conversation about the book of Judges, but it turns into a conversation about what it means to be eyewitnesses of Jesus, paying attention to how we've seen Jesus at work in the world. We even have a conversation about some of the issues facing us as a nation and the next generation. This is a very practical conversation, and we pray that you take something from it, hear it, put it into your own conversations. As always, we hope you enjoy it. Kevin.
Hello, Aaron. Greetings. Shalom to you, friend.
Yeah, and also with you.
Oh, thanks, dude.
Well, it's good to be back. I loved your conversation with Art last week. That was a good move. I thought to bring him in and have him be part of this conversation. And he's such a deep thinker.
Mm-hmm. Incredibly, yeah. I was trying my best to keep up.
Yeah. No, you guys, you did it great. I mean, for a 30-minute, kind of podcast episode. I mean, you guys, again, when you're talking about philosophy and all of that stuff, I mean, it can go down some major rabbit holes and stuff, because those are problems and things that people have been talking about from the very beginning and stuff. So I thought you guys did a good job of just kind of picking a couple of key points and getting after it. So
no, thanks, man. I think it's neat to think, and obviously art is not exclusive in this realm, right? Or the idea that, like, in our congregation, right, as a brotherhood, sisterhood here at St. Peter and Paul, wow. I mean, we got people, I'm sure, all over the place who have, unique, kind of ideas, experiences that they bring to the table that help encourage us in the faith. And so I don't know if all of our members or congregants here, attendees, know and understand that, like, we also love following Jesus with them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
We're co-Christians in the walk.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I learned so much from people in the church, and just and especially just watching you live out the faith in regular daily living is such an encouragement to me too. So yeah, a lot of you guys, you live in the world, you work in the world. I mean, I try to do as much as I can to expose myself to other people outside of the church, but again, I'm limited by time, and a lot of my time is spent here and with you and with family and stuff too. So I know that I have a little bit different perspective on the world, just because I don't experience a lot of the same stuff in my workplace as you guys do in your workplaces, and so on and so forth. So so it's just a super helpful angle to us to see how the faith is actually lived out practically in your lives. Yeah.
That idea alone, Aaron, not to jump too far ahead,
no, let's go ahead.
I feel like it, that idea of living in and among, but not of the world, right? This is kind of the storyline of the story, right?
Yeah.
And not only in Joshua, the week before, when they're going in to try and, drive out these nations that God says, drive them out.
Yeah.
In particular, because he doesn't want them to adopt their cultural practices.
Yeah.
And then now here in the Judges time, they've mostly done that, but not completely.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this constant back and forth tug of war with, how God has told them, how to live and who to serve, and then them repeatedly kind of falling into, I guess into the habits or the practices of these foreign peoples.
Yeah. And it's just, it happens quickly, in the realm of history, how quick, basically, like, a generation can turn away. We had this discussion a little bit because I teach a Bible class on Sunday mornings here, and so we had a conversation there. Maybe some of you listening to this were also there, but we had a conversation there about like why nations kind of decline and what might cause some of that stuff. And so there was basically it kind of summed up to the fact of like, when I don't know, some of it's natural, some of it's intentional, some of it's unintentional. But like, so let's I don't know, let's just take America for example.
Oh, sure.
I think like the people who settled this place, who, you know, escaped persecution, oppression, got on unsafe ships, traveled across the ocean, probably plenty of their family died. They get to a new place or settling. Like,
yeah,
there's probably an incredible appreciation that they have for this new place that they call home. We're not just one generation removed from the people who first came here. We're multiple generations away from those, you know, the European settlers at least. And I think it's hard for us, as it would have been even for the next generation after them. There's just we don't have the same level of connection to that suffering, to that oppression, to that journey that they went through. So it's just very easy for us to slip away and be like, even if we're trying to appreciate what they went through, we still can't fully because we weren't there, you know? And so some of it's this kind of this natural progression where the next generation or the next generations it's just not the same experience for them as for the ones who are actually going through it. So in the case of like Judges, the first generation that was with Joshua in the wilderness and went through the conquest, they remained faithful to God. But when they all died in the next generation that was born in this land amongst these foreign gods, it's just sort of like, yeah, I know we heard the stories, but I don't know. Like this is also our reality that we've got to figure out how to live in. So there's just kind of these natural things that happen as the generations pass where they just fall away. I think something can be done about that. Like the generation who did experience those things, I believe, and this is where I went in my sermon, has the responsibility to tell the next generation, especially when we're talking about God and faith in God and what God has done, the story of who our God is. It's our responsibility to tell that next generation the story of who God is and who they are in God's sight. So if that generation, because they're already naturally going to like slip away because they didn't experience it. So the only way to kind of combat that is to be very intentional about teaching them. So if you're not teaching them and time goes by, that next generation is just going to completely fall away.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I had kind of an astute student on Sunday in our confirmation age Sunday class who said, why didn't Joshua raise up a leader to replace him?
Okay.
And that was a really neat question, you know, because that person was identifying, you know, that Moses had done something as he was passing on, right, which was raising up Joshua. Yeah. And that was a good move. Yeah. You know, the people like needed someone to kind of be that point person, that leader. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot of questions we can ask the scriptures that we won't get answers to, you know. We're not going to learn from scripture why or why not that Joshua didn't raise somebody up. But it struck me, you know, and it's very much in line with what you're saying. There needs to be voices speaking into the next generation, you know, or there needs to be voices of leadership speaking into the rest of a community to help them, know their God, stay in line with their God and kind of his path for them, know his promises, know how he's acted, so their faith can be built up. And, you know, we talk a lot about discipleship here at the church, absolutely. Right? And that's that same idea of you raise up people under you. And if, you know, so in a family setting, you're raising up your children. Right?
Absolutely.
They're kind of the next ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and I didn't use the word discipleship yesterday, but I was teaching what discipleship, a part of it is, which is this idea of witnessing and giving testimony to the things that we've seen and experienced in God's sight. Now, I made the claim, I'm curious what you think about this, but I made the claim in my sermon that we are all eyewitnesses of Jesus. I said that to the people. I said, you are eyewitnesses of Jesus. I don't know. you might react differently to an average person in the pews because you're a pastor, but I don't know what like. Do you think of it that way?
So I guess I'll say no.
Okay.
But like if I heard eyewitness, because I spent a lot of my life thinking, like, man, if I just had grown up and lived at the time of Jesus and had seen Jesus, like, how much stronger would my faith be, right? Yeah. I always thought that growing up. And so like kind of initially that comment of being an eyewitness, it's like, but I'm not, I wish I was.
I think it might have been harder.
Well, that's just it. The more I've grown and matured, the more I've seen, like, I don't know that. Yeah, I don't think it's any easier. I don't know that there's necessarily a difference because you had people all around Jesus who didn't.
And many walked away.
Yeah, right. I mean, he was very countercultural, very outside the norm. So right. You're not saying us being an eyewitness. You're not making the claim that like I've in a vision seen Jesus, right? Like Paul. But what you're saying is we have seen God's power or presence and experienced that in some pretty visceral, tangible way in our life.
Yes.
And so I won't even speak on behalf of me at first, because you're saying I'm a pastor, so probably I would, right? Yeah. There was someone after the service who I got in a conversation with who said, when you mentioned that, they thought of a very specific moment in their life. Yep. A very specific moment when there was a conflict, family conflict going on, and it had created separation and kind of hurt feelings and stuff, and it really, they felt like it wasn't really, like they were kind of in the right, right? The person I was speaking to. And, but they said one day, and this is how they described it, they said, it was like the Holy Spirit rushed on me.
Wow.
Which is how it talks in the Judges. I thought that was funny. I made that comment to the person. I was like, that's how Judges talks, actually. The Holy Spirit rushed on these different judges and led them to do things. Yeah. But what they experienced was this strong urge to call up those family members and basically just take that first step and even apologize. Even though they didn't feel like they had really done anything wrong in the situation, they wanted to take that first step of reconciliation. Yeah. And it was profound to them, and it was very like otherworldly. It was God, it felt very much like God. It wasn't anything that they had decided of their own kind of like feelings about the situation to do, And I thought, well, that's exactly it. That's exactly, I think, one instance of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of instances of God's activity, and maybe we'll talk about the more, like common, reliable kind of ones. But for this person, of course, would God want the reconciliation between them and their family?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And they thought of that and identified that. Wow. And I thought, hey, boom, you're an eyewitness. I mean, that's something as a follower of Jesus, you can say, look, I have experienced the power of God in my life.
Right. And that's, I'm so glad that person shared it with you, and I hope that they feel comfortable when the time comes sharing that with somebody else. Mm-hmm. Like, because that's, again, I said this in my sermon, but like the thing that hits me, because I grew up in the church, and we would always talk about like witnessing, witnessing to, like witnessing is the like code word for telling other people about Jesus. I feel like, but I would always get confused because I'm like, well, witnessing, like, why don't they just call it talking to other people about Jesus? Because in my mind, I'm like, well, a witness just sees something, but it's built into that word that a witness that sees something actually is the one who also talks about it.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's why we use the word witness, because you've seen it, you've experienced it, you're called to testify. Mm-hmm. So like, I very quickly in my sermon said, like, if you witness a crime and the court calls you, I don't know how this happens, this has never happened to me, but I think that if you witness a crime, they call you up and be like, hey, we need you to come and testify at trial, and you're like, oh, gee, I never went to school to do that. Like, I don't have a degree in criminal justice. Like, I can't.
I'm not even like 100% totally sure exactly what I saw.
Yeah.
And
that,
But you saw something.
Yeah. So just tell us what you saw. We'll ask you some questions.
Yeah.
That is what we have been called, commanded to do in the world.
Yeah.
Is to witness what we have seen and experienced firsthand in Jesus. Not to have all the theological answers, but simply to notice how have I experienced God's presence and activity in this world. Well, what does God do? Well, he gives life. He sustains life. He forgives, which is like a restoring of life. These are things that only God can do, right? So pay attention to those things. Notice those things. Give God credit for doing those things. And then when the time comes, talk about it. Talk about it. There are a lot, I don't know. I've had a lot of people tell me over the years, and probably some of you listening, I've had a lot of people just tell me, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I don't know what I'm supposed to say about Jesus. I don't know how to teach people about Jesus. I mean, you don't have to. That's the point. Just find something that you can say in your life. This is what Jesus has done in my life, and just share that.
Yeah.
That's all, and let the Spirit be at work.
Yeah. Well, and I like too that that you went there in that idea of testifying as a witness, right? And that that it's not based on our intellect or our ability to know a ton about theology or even the scriptures, right? If you just know Jesus, that's kind of it. Yeah. And it's congruent with in the New Testament when Jesus says to the disciples, "You will be my witnesses," right? Yeah. And okay, we're talking about the guys who had run away when the mob showed up, right? Had denied Jesus to others, had basically abandoned Jesus to his death. Guys who, during the 3 years they spent with him, were kind of always bumbling around, saying the wrong things. These guys do not seem qualified at all. But God says it's not about you being qualified because you've done something. God says you are my witnesses. You just are.
Yeah. And so when we think about I think we've already identified what it is that we've witnessed, hopefully, or those of you listening can think about that in your own life. What have I witnessed? What have I seen Jesus do that only Jesus can do? And then who have I been called to testify to? And that's the move that I was making in the sermon to, in particular, the next generation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. Absolutely. I mean, I would also just say, whoever's right around you, whoever's right around you, whenever that is, just be ready to testify to them. But let's talk about the next generation in particular.
Okay.
Because it is a huge thing for us to be cognizant about and intentional about investing in the next generation and raising them up as God-fearing people. Have you heard some of that stuff that I didn't share a source on it? I think my source is the Barna Research Group.
That's what came to mind for me when you.
But the generation, I believe it's the high school age and even college age, the Gen Z they call it, which already now, you and I are raising up kids in the next generation after
Beyond
that. I don't even know if they have a name yet, but Gen Z they call them would be, I believe it's late high school, early college age. Gen Z was and is the least churched and most unchristian generation in American history, because they're the ones who are being raised by I think often even millennial or not millennials, Gen X probably.
Gen X, yeah. Possibly boomers as well. Depending on how.
I don't think so.
Well, I think my youngest brother's Gen Z, just barely, because he just graduated.
Okay.
College this past year. Oh. Undergrad.
Okay.
And so my dad would be in the boomer.
Okay.
So, but these things are fluid as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But the younger you go towards the late Gen X and millennial, they're those are generations who may have been kind of culturally raised in the church or raised in kind of a Christian world, but the majority of them have kind of walked away from that. Maybe totally writing away the faith, but at least writing away in their practice, practical Christianity, a church attendance, serving, giving, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So then they're raising kids kind of in that worldview. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know that we need to turn this into an excursus on what we know about Gen Z, but I don't know. You work with some of the younger kids here, college age, high school, confirmation age. Again, those are kids that are in church, but I don't know. Are you noticing, like, are they having different conversations or ways of seeing the world that's different than, like, even the way that you were raised? Have you noticed?
I think the biggest notice that I would have, and it's hard, for me, because I feel like I'm even still, so often sorting out my world. I don't feel like I've come to a place where I'm like, I finally understand the world I live in, in myself even. So sometimes it's hard to make the comparisons, I feel like, to different generations. But I think the biggest thing that strikes me is their access to information and kind of not so much their access to it, like they're going out and seeking all this stuff and it's like a big danger, but more like almost the assault of information on them.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I didn't pay attention to anything.
Yeah.
I just chased butterflies or something.
Yeah.
Life was pretty simple is how I think of my childhood.
Yeah.
I grew up during 9/11 and I had a very remedial or loose or distant even idea of what had happened, and that's a huge significant event.
Yeah.
But I feel like kids today are very aware of stuff that's going on, politically or culturally or even globally, just because we live in such an interconnected world now. And they also have, not all of them, but I think most probably have iPhones and smartphones in their pockets, so they have the world in their pocket.
Yeah.
And I didn't grow up with that either.
Yeah.
So to me, that's what strikes me. I'm sure there's many other differences, but that's the one that really stands out to me is that it's a lot for me as an adult to manage.
Totally.
Those voices, whether it's news outlets, which I don't think the kids are probably listening to too much of, but even just if you get on YouTube or any video streaming service, you watch one video, it's just going to autoplay into the next one 5 seconds after you're done, which isn't really enough response time or discipline time to say, well, no, I don't need to watch anything more. So now you get things that are just being suggested to you. You didn't even go out searching for. And that's to me why I see it as an assault of information. There's so much that they're having to intake and sort through. And I guess, to kind of come back to the Israelites or to, this idea of what kind of voices we need in our lives, those suggested YouTube videos are probably not going to be ones where God's truth is speaking to us. We're just kind of assaulted all the time of ideas and, truths. I'm air quoting there if you're listening audibly, but, these worldly, quote unquote, truths or relative truths about the world that really aren't true.
Yeah.
And it just becomes, I think, very hard to manage all of that. Yeah, there's so many voices. So how do you sort through that? That's what I noticed in the kids anyway.
Yeah. And that's fair. And I've seen the same thing too. And the thing that saddens me, and there's people trying to figure out cause and effect of what's causing. But a lot of the next generation, and this is proven to, are dealing with really, really high rates of anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts.
Yep.
The promiscuous behavior, things like drug use, alcohol use, even sexual promiscuity, some of these issues that maybe earlier generations, that was the bad thing they're dealing with. A lot of those rates are actually decreasing.
Interesting.
But the rates of anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and even suicidal attempts is just off the charts.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people surmise that what you're saying is the cause of that. I'm sure there's multiple causes, but I don't think you can not make that connection. I know, you said, even for me, it's too much. I read the news, I pay attention, I talk to people, and I'm just shut it off. Throw I love my technology, but I just sometimes want to throw my iPhone in the trash and just forget.
Yeah.
But then there's like that cultural pull of almost like, well, if you don't know what's going on, like you're not smart, you're not.
I was gonna say it's a strange cultural pull because like I almost want to finish that sentence by with like, well, if you don't know, then how can you do anything about it? But it's like, are we doing anything about it anyway?
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we just intake information, but I don't know that it actually changes tangible decision making in the day to day.
Yeah.
At least for like 95% of what you can learn about.
Especially when we consider from a theological perspective what it is that God really, really wants us to do on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Which we could probably squeeze down into love Him.
Yeah.
And love our neighbor.
Love our neighbors as ourselves, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who is my neighbor? The people that are right around me. Who's usually right around you? Your family, your kids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Testifying to them about what Jesus is doing.
Well, and that's just
living it out. I mean,
like,
sorry,
go ahead.
there are a lot of worldly problems, and there are going to be a lot of worldly problems.
Right. And you mentioned some of those. Even.
Yeah, and whenever you're exposed to something to be able to do to address any of those problems, do it. Mm-hmm. But also, don't neglect also what's right in front of you. Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the bigger call for us. I think sometimes in lots of ways as humans we kind of have dreams of grandeur. Like I'm gonna affect some huge thing, or I need to go in order to testify, in order to witness, I gotta go take a mission trip to Brazil and speak to people who've never heard about Jesus. Yeah. I'm like, no, you don't have to do that.
Well, your neighbor also might not know Jesus.
Right.
Literally the person across the street.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even I think our own children, maybe they know Jesus, but man, there's a depth there that we can keep feeding into as well. And so I mean, God's not calling us to go save the world because He already did that.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. If news makes you, if we think that we're going to read, these huge, big problems and do something about them, like what I find really encouraging about the scriptures is that you don't read them and then learn all the things that you have to do to fix the world or fix yourself. You actually read it and you learn that there's someone who's actively doing that.
Yeah.
And of course He's using us, but kind of where we are. It doesn't have to be this huge, huge thing. Yeah. And I know at least I've had that problem, even when it comes to the testifying, of really blowing that up into something much bigger than it needs to be.
Yeah. And even along those lines too, like I was going to say this in my sermon, but there's too much to say. A lot of us look to worldly people and solutions for these worldly problems, and I think like a lot of us also want a worldly judge to come along and solve the problems, and I feel like we get this temptation a lot, like every election cycle, also, where it's like, this has got to be the guy who's going to set it straight. This has got to be the gal who's just going to make everything right. Mm-hmm. There's finally going to be peace in our land. Like everybody's going to have what they need. It's just no more war, no more. Nobody's going to be poor. Like it's gonna be good. We just got to get the right people and the right policies. What people really want is Jesus. Kevin, I think this has been a great conversation, but I think we should end it on that note, probably. All we need is Jesus. Jesus is the one who came to deliver us. And so, hey, Kevin, have a great rest of your day. Listeners, have a great rest of yours as well. Peace.
Thanks, buddy.